Hello and welcome to this webinar. My name's Dave Roscoe. I'm Business Development Manager at Footprint Digital. Been in the digital industry since about the mid-90s. 95, did my first websites with the Telegraph newspaper and various others. So been around a long time, seen lots of it all come and go. And what I'm going to share today with you are some ideas and some practical stuff that you can take away to help you in your own business. And the theme of this particular presentation is how to use data to produce a winning strategy. And as I say, we're going to share some of the tricks that not tricks, but ideas and things that we use within our business. I think when it comes to marketing, one of the things to really always bear in mind that everything, this concept of everything connects. If you're not feeling great, as a person, you're not looking after your diet, you're not exercising enough, or you're not brushing your teeth properly, or whatever those things might be, then all of those things will kind of connect and make you not operate at the best that you can be. And it's exactly the same with your marketing. If you don't look at the whole of what's going on, and particularly in this world that we live in now from a digital perspective, really, really important to think about how your business is perceived in the various different places that people might come across you online. So it's really an opportunity here to look at the entire kind of ecosystem of your online exposure. So we do that with clients when they come and work with us through a thing called the digital marketing audit. And as I say, what I'm going to do is going to share that process with you today. And these are things that if you're up for it, you can take away and do yourself. Obviously, we can make that happen for you as well. But these are practical things in this session that you can take back into your own business and really make a difference. And why would you want to do the audit? Well, this is about thinking about where you're at this particular moment in time from an exposure perspective. Are you getting enough leads? Are the sales coming in? Do you need more? If you're looking for yourself on Google or Bing, are you finding yourself? Sometimes people come to us and say, oh no, our website traffic has dropped off. We don't really know why. Or we're getting lots of traffic, but we're not getting lots of leads. So all of these things are reasons that you would want to actually go through this kind of audit process. And the whole point of this series is to benchmark exactly where you're at this particular moment in time, where your business stands, how is it perceived by people when they're coming across you. And it's an opportunity also to look at market opportunities. So what does the marketplace look like? How much potential traffic is out there? What could I bring to the business? What difference could it make? And then obviously then to find those areas and to make a priority list of what needs to be done, what's worth doing, what's not worth doing, how much time is this going to take? Because that can give you some realistic idea of what's going to happen in the future. And as I say, we do this through the digital marketing audit. So this is an 8-step kind of process, and I'm going to share all of those kind of techniques with you today. The starting point is what we call the business audit, or we call it the business questions within the business here. And it's part of something that I do as part of my initial kind of discussion with a lead that comes in with a new business. And what I want to find out for them is who they are, what they do, what they sell, where are they trying to get to, what are their aspirations and targets, what's the ethos of the business, what kind of morals do they work to. That's really important from a messaging perspective. But what's quite interesting is very often when I ask those questions, marketers aren't actually able to necessarily give me full answers to those things. And sometimes that causes a little bit of embarrassment with people because they feel that maybe when they're asked that question, they're kind of put on the spot. But it's so typical. So if you're looking at these type of questions and thinking, I'm not sure if I could really answer that, you're with a lot of other people on that side of things. But really sit down and think about where the business is at the moment. So very simple questions like, what are we actually selling? So from a services perspective, if you're if it's legal, as we're talking about here, that's probably a very broad brush of different things that your business does. But think about the ones that are most important to the business. So where do you have gaps? Where could you work? Where could you do more of? And isolate those and think about, what's important from a cash perspective. Where are the ones that are, high priority for the business? Where are the ones that have the most margin? Where there's a good level of potential sale to be had. So be thinking about those things. And then from a goal perspective, thinking about where do we want to be? Where does the business want to be in 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the time frames might be? And these might be questions that you need to go back to the board on. And very often, and frustratingly so, marketers within businesses often don't have that level of they're not been given that level of information. And that makes your job really, really difficult. So go and ask those questions. Hey, as a team, where do we need to be? How can I do my job as a marketer if I don't know where the finish line is, for example? So think about those goals. Think about what it is you want your website to do, for example. Why does it exist? Probably it's to generate leads. It might be for other reasons, but let's assume it's lead generation. So we want to understand, what do we need from our website in order to grow the business? How many more leads do we need? Thinking about your different audiences and your different types of people that you might want to be talking to. Have you really defined those? Have you really got that nailed down? Do you know what your perfect customer looks like for each of your kind of vertical service lines? Territories, in this environment here, obviously we talk about, physical geographical location. So are you working in a localized area? Is that important to you? Or actually are some of your services, or indeed all of your services, a national side of things? So really be thinking about, again, from a perfect lead perspective, if this lead lands on my desk today, I go, wow, that's brilliant, because it's in the right area, they're after the right service, they look like they're the right type of business that we want to be dealing with in terms of size, and therefore spendability, and all of those sorts of things. So really be thinking about that. And then the final one to think about is, how are we going to track this? How am I going to keep measurement? How am I going to know what's working and what's not working? What are those KPIs that I need to be hitting? So really have a think about those things. And again, ask around in the business, what do people want to know from you? As a marketer, what do people want in the business? What do they want to know that you're doing and where you're moving towards? So lots of things to think about there. We do have a full list of questions actually in a document. My contact details at the end of this presentation. Feel free to reach out and I'll happily send you a copy of the questions that I use for businesses. So just to wrap that up then, define your customer, really think about who they are, where they are, and what they need from you. And fundamentally think about what it is that they are searching for. So what are they calling your services? Okay, stage 2 then is tracking. So how are we going to track what's going on within a business? Well, typically on your website, you'll have probably Google Analytics or GA4 implemented onto your website. And we need to make sure, as part of the process that we do, is that the data that is being collected is in fact correct. So we don't trust GA4 out of the box. It needs a lot of management. We looked at 150 Google Analytics accounts recently, and 83% of them were not actually showing the correct data. So that's a bit of a worry. So ask some questions of it. Have you got the proper setup? Have you linked it with Google Search Console? Are you tracking all of the individual things that are happening on the website? So for example, you might have video plays, you might have documents to be downloaded, you might have read more buttons, or content that expands out and things like that. So have a look at that stuff, because all of those things can give you useful information in terms of how people are working on your website, how they're interacting with you, and look at all of those things and think, are we tracking all of those things? Is that being put out in a nice, easy to read report? And again, that's something we can help you with. If you haven't got reporting set up, reach out and we can help you with that. So double check the data collection before you do anything else. Next thing to do is then obviously to go in and actually look at that data. So for us, when we're looking in people's GA4 accounts, we're looking to see where that data is coming from, both in terms of geographically, but also from which sources. So is it coming from Google search? Is it coming from an ad? Is it coming from social channels? Is it coming direct on the website? All of those things. And all of this information is available within the platform. That will give you an idea of how people are reaching you and where they're finding you, and that you can also then look to see what they're doing once they get onto those pages. Are they interacting, or are they leaving straight away? Are they bouncing off the website? A really interesting kind of channel to look down is your mobile traffic and comparing that to desktop traffic. So if there's a marked difference between mobile engagement compared to desktop, i.e. it's a lot less, for example, people are not looking at the same number of pages, or they're not spending the same amount of time on the site, it could well be that they're having trouble on their mobile phone. And a good question that I always ask, if I was in the room with you, I'd be asking you this, which is, when was the last time that you looked at your own website? And hopefully as a marketer, you will say, we look at it a lot, Dave. But then my next question would be, when was the last time you looked at your website on a mobile phone? So if you haven't done that, get your phone out, have a look at your site, and just try and look at it as though you were a potential client. And would you feel comfortable? Can you find everything that you're looking for? Would you perhaps bounce off and go onto somebody else's website? So lots of things to be looking at in there in terms of analytics. Now, a lot of people really struggle. I've always struggled with analytics. Most people kind of say to me, yeah, Dave, I get to the first page, I log in, I get to the first page and I see that traffic's gone up last week, and I kind of go, okay, great. And then I step back again. And that is okay in a sense, but obviously you want to be doing a lot more with that. Now, there's plenty of training available out there. And if you haven't done some of this, here's some free resources for you. So just go to the Google Analytics Academy and then start off with, Google Analytics for beginners. It's a good place to start, even if you think you know what you're doing. And follow the training through, watch all the videos. And there's an assessment at the end of it. You can get yourself a certificate as well. And once you've done the beginners bit, you can move on to the advanced and things like that. For most of us, power users and Google Analytics 360, probably not that relevant. In all honesty, I'd stick with the first two as a basic. But get on there, do that. Just one caveat with all things Google. Obviously, it's very, very Google centric. And isn't necessarily some of the things that they suggest. And particularly watch out when you're doing the quiz or the test at the end. Always think with your Google hat on, what would Google want me to say in this particular thing? And that's exactly the same for all kind of Google courses that go on. But really good. It's still absolutely worthwhile doing and will certainly help you. So we've done our business audit, we've done our tracking audit, and we've looked at our data. The next thing we want to be thinking about is keyword research. So our website, what do we want our website to be ranking for? What would our customers type in? And a really interesting one, a good comparison here is thinking about how people search for what I guess you guys would probably call family law, which is a term that's very much kind of banded around there. But most people probably, when they go to Google, most potential clients would type in divorce lawyer or divorce solicitor or whatever. And we've got to think about not what we call it within the business, not what our kind of pet name for it is or the correct name for it is. I sometimes hear people saying, but actually go back to basics. What do our customers call it? because if they type that into a search engine and your page is not using that kind of language, then A, they're not going to find your page, but also if they do find it and they land on it and it's not in sync with their kind of terminology, that potentially could push them away from you. So how can we research what people are actually looking for? Well, there's a number of quite simple kind of ways. Go to a Google page, type in a service and see what kind of comes up. Have a look at some of those results that come up. Go away and look at some competitors that are on there. Have a look at the language that they're using on the ranking thing that pops up on the page, but also click through all their pages, have a look at their website pages and just see what sort of language that they're targeting. Also, you'll know when you start typing into Google, Google starts to give you automated suggestions on the page. So you drop down, have a look at those. Sometimes you look at it and think, oh, that's quite an interesting kind of variation there. And that might give you some ideas in terms of alternative keyword phrases. Also on the page, you'll have things, you have something that says, people also asked this, or you might get the AI suggestions come up for a question string and things like that. Again, have a look at those and look for variations on a theme. If you've got Google Search Console set up, you can go in there, access that account, and that will tell you the traffic that's been arriving at the site, what people have actually typed into Google to actually find your website. And again, that can be really useful, again, for looking at variations. We're going to look at Google Trends and Keyword Planner in a second, so I'll come back to that. We'll look at those specifically. The other thing to be really thinking about is, how are you ranked? So you've come up with these keywords that you think you want to be ranking for. How are we going to work out where we're actually ranking for those things? So again, I'll show you some tools that you can use for that. So let's have a look at this first one here. Now, an interesting one, and a lot of people don't realize that within Google's keyword planner. So if you want to get some ideas for keywords, go to Google, type in Google Keyword Planner if you don't have an ads account already, and you can access the keyword planning tool. You can pop in your website address and it will spit out a load of potential keywords that it thinks you should be ranking for, or I would say more sensibly, pick a few keyword phrases, drop those into the search bar, and it will then give you a load of variations, and it will also give you average search volumes that are being done every month, in the UK. But one of the things that you can do, and it's really useful if you're a localized business, is you can actually get Google Keyword Planner to give you much more localized traffic. So there's this example here, not a particularly great one because obviously it's Paris, but it gives you a feel for it. But literally, you can put in a town or an area, and it will then allow you to select that, and then it will give you search volumes in your local area. And that's much more useful to you as a marketer, rather than knowing that 10,000 people a month search for, divorce lawyer in the UK kind of thing. You need to know what that is in your kind of local area. So useful tool there, and that's free to access. Google Market Finder is another interesting one, perhaps not 100% relevant necessarily for this particular audience, but useful to know that it's there. So for example, if you were looking to run services in other countries, for example, you can actually drop in, you can go to Google Market Finder, pop in your service, and it will tell you where the most populous markets are, where there's the greatest kind of search volumes for things. So useful one to have a little play with, but maybe slightly off topic for today's session. How can you work out where you're ranking? Well, obviously you could go on a Google page, type in your keyword, and then scan down and click through the page until you find yourself. You have to be a little bit careful with that, because it will give you a probably an unrealistic ranking of where you actually are, because Google will recognize the fact that you've been going to your own website quite frequently, and therefore it tends to give it a bit of an elevated view within the search pages. So quite often you'll hear people in the business, oh, I typed in so-and-so and I found us on page 1. We're doing really, really well. When actually you're not really on page 1 because you're seeing an inflated view. A better way to do it from a free perspective is to go to Google Search Console, and within Google Search Console you'll be able to find accurate keyword ranking positions for certain phrases that you're ranking for. So I would recommend that rather than the manual review. There are a number of paid tools out there where you can actually put in a block of keywords and track those on a more regular basis. So it's a little bit better way of doing it. Things like Moz or SEMrush or Ahrefs, they all do broadly the same kind of thing, but they are a subscription model. You can do a certain element of free, and you'll probably get a free trial on most of these things, but have a little play with them. There's certainly something that typically the agencies use, but lots of clients use them as well. So we've had a look, we've worked out what we want to rank for, we know roughly where we're ranking, and therefore we know the scale of the job that needs to be done in order to get more organic traffic. Next thing we need to do is look at the website and check it from an SEO perspective. So how well is it working? Now, the problem with this part of it is that actually it's quite complicated. I mean, there are hundreds of factors that kind of come into ranking a website. And when we're doing an audit, we look at 120 plus specific things, specific factors that we're looking for to benchmark where a site is actually operating. And that gets a bit complicated, but basically you can break down SEO into 3 main areas. And I like to call it, we like to call them the 3 pillars of SEO. So that's technical, content, and trust. So technical is the way the website works. So when Google comes calling and starts crawling over your pages, does it trust your website? Does it understand your website? Does it work properly? Is it quick enough? Does it work well on a mobile phone? Are the pages interlinked together and those sorts of things? That's really, really important. So that technical side of things is a little bit tricky to do yourself. You may well need some help with that. But one of the things that you can do is more easy is look at the content. So content being the second of the pillars. And the things that you're looking for here from a content point of view is looking at things like the meta title, the page title on the page, and indeed the meta description that pops up in the Google search results page. Are they optimized? Do they have relevant keywords in them? Does the body content on that page, is it substantial enough? Does it have a good smattering of keywords in it that would allow the search engine to find that page relevant, but without overdoing it? I once did an audit of a limo company based in London, really quite a big company, hundreds of limos, doing lots and lots of work, particularly in the Arab market, making lots and lots of money. But his website had dropped off a cliff. And when I looked at he said, "Can you have a look at have a look at the website? Can you see what the problem is?" And when I looked at the homepage, the word limo hire London was mentioned 121 times on the one page. And he said, "Oh yeah, I added a few extra on the other day, a few." And of course, Google had looked at his page and said, "This is ridiculous. You're trying to spam me and kick the website out." So sensible levels of optimization on page. Google's looking for what it calls adequate body content, in the sense of adequate in the volume of words. Google likes pictures, but it prefers words. It prefers paragraphs. It's not particularly great with bullet points, although bullet points can be great for consumers to sum things up. But a page that's going to rank really well on Google has sensible size kind of paragraphs and plenty of content on it. So have a look at your pages. Do they look a bit light? If they're a bit light, they're probably going to struggle to rank. Images. If you've got images on your site, then you have an option to put an alt tag, or there will be alt tags on them, and you can bury some keywords in there. But again, don't overdo it. Pages with video and resources, things like that. They're all useful to have on pages. And from a usability perspective, testimonials and quotes from clients, things like that, very, very important from a creds perspective. And really important that those pages link together. So it's called sort of contextual linking. So you'll be reading, you know, if you're reading down a page and then you suddenly see some highlighted words, that if you hover your mouse over that, that will click and take you through to the relevant page for that particular thing. You know, 2 or 3 contextual links on each page, very useful for the search engines to navigate around the site, but also very useful for me as a visitor, because it's basically saying, hey, you're on this page here, but probably the next page you want to go to is this one over here. So lots of things that you can look at from that perspective. Speed is critical in terms of search engine rankings. And if you go to a Google page and just type in Google page speed test, it will take you to this little tool here. And you can just type your website address in, and it will give you a score for desktop and mobile scores. And you'll see these 2 performance figures here. So this is desktop, so it's scoring 83 out of 100 for this particular website. So it's in the amber zone. To get in the green zone, you need to be like 90% plus. But you'll notice this one over on the left-hand side here, where the score is 28, and it's fundamentally in the red zone. Anything under 50% hits the red zone. But with something like that, that is a real problem for ranking. Google makes the assumption these days that everybody uses mobile in order to access websites. True for some websites, not true for all, but as far as Google's concerned, it's mobile or nothing. So if you put your website into this and you see your score coming back in the red zone, or indeed even in the amber zone, really, it's going to need some work doing to it. And that's the job to go back to your developer or your website agency and say, look, what's going on here? Why is my site so slow? Very often it's through a variety of reasons. It could be too many plugins on the website. It could be that the code is quite old, the website technology is old, and therefore it's running slowly, and maybe it's time for a new website perhaps. Or more often than not, it's the size of images and videos that are on those pages that are slowing things down. And there's loads of simple fixes that can be done for that to speed websites up. So definitely this is a tool worth looking at, and just sense checking where you're at. I've included this one on here. This website tool has actually been discontinued. They're not, Google has done away with it. But I keep it in there for really just as a discussion point. And this comes back to, when was the last time you looked at your website on your mobile phone? So get that phone out of your pocket or off the desk, have a quick Google, have a quick search on your own site. Does it work? Do you feel that you can actually get your finger on the buttons? Do the pages actually lay out as you would want them to do? Is it easy to find your services and things like that? Globally, 56% or more search is done on mobile devices, but for some businesses that might be as high as 80-85%. And quite often people will say to, oh, we're B2B dev, or we're lawyers or whatever, and everybody will use mobile. And yet when I go in and look at their analytics, I will see that their mobile traffic is maybe 60-70%. Sometimes it might be, it could be as low as 25%, something like that. It's just difficult to tell. So don't make an assumption. Go in and have a look at your traffic. But most importantly of all this is, if Google thinks that it's not very mobile friendly, then that is going to affect your rankings. So even if your traffic is 90% desktop, you still need to look at your mobile experience. And then from a content point of view, really, really important. This kind of comes back to what I was talking about earlier on in terms of making sure that we use words that our customers are using. So we talk about the concept of localization, and I don't mean from a geographical perspective, but actually local usage of words. So it's really, really important to think very, very hard, and you should have done that through your keyword research that we talked about earlier on, thinking about how our clients or our potential clients might call a particular service, and then we need to put that into those words. And also be really careful with the body content. So not just so much the keywords, but actually the entire kind of content and the meaning behind it and things like that. Does it really speak to me as a as a potential client? So if I land on that page, do I actually feel that there is resonance? Does this page understand me? Does it understand the challenge or the problem that I've got? Does it make me want to pick up the phone and actually have the first conversation with you, or do I leave your website and go to somebody else's and have a look at theirs? Really, really important. Next one to think about is Google Ads or social media ads if you're running those. And something that we do for businesses is we audit what is going on in those accounts to see if the services could be, if the returns on those ad campaigns could be better. So if you are running ads, the sorts of things you need to be looking at is, are you targeting the right keywords? That goes back to that keyword research. Are we going after keywords with intent? If you're spending money pulling traffic to the website through pay-per-click ads, you don't want window shoppers. You want people that are actually in the process of actually thinking about buying. So really, really important to double check your keyword targeting. Are you going after the right kind of phrases where people might actually be interested in buying? Every ad and every keyword that you have within the account will have a quality score against it, and that's on a scale of 1 to 10. If your quality scores are 7 or less, they need some investigation. If they're 5 or less, they really need some investigation, because you will be wasting money on wasted clicks. You'll be paying more cost per click, because the worse your quality scores are, then your cost per clicks will rise. So really think about those. For those, again, that are running ads, really make sure that you're using all of the platform opportunities. So if you have opportunities to put in additional lines of text, extensions, those kind of things, ad extensions, make sure that you're filling out as much as you possibly can. The more you put into the system, the better you will get out. If you're running ads, again, have a look at your geographic targeting. So are your ads only showing to the marketplace that you really want to be selling to? I've had, often seen, ads that are running UK wide for somebody that's only interested in, dealing with people in, say, central London, for example. Well, there's no point getting inquiries in Glasgow if you're not going to be able to handle them. So look at your geographics. Also try and identify any negative keywords that you don't want your accounts to be, your ads to be ranking for or showing for. Make sure that you keep an eye on those, but revisit that on a regular basis. If you do have a negative keyword set, or you've got a list in your account, make sure that you're going in and looking at those on a regular basis to make sure, A, that they're up to date, but also that they're not actually preventing traffic coming from coming to your website. Most important in terms of ad campaigns is to rotate your ads and make sure that you're trialing different messages. The biggest mistake we see is people that create a set of ad copy, they set that running, and then they just leave it and ignore it. And what happens is, over time, it just kind of goes into a tailspin, and you get a diminishing rate of return. So really be spending some time in terms of thinking about keeping your messages up to date. Maybe there's some seasonality going on, or stuff that's happening in the news or whatever it might be like that. But make sure that your ads are regularly reviewed and kept up to date. And just really think very, very carefully about that, who you're trying to go after, and the demographic of those. And there's lots of things within the platforms that can help you tie that down better. So make sure that you're utilizing those kind of things, and you'll get better returns out of your ads. Here's some more free resources from Google, the Google Skill Shop. If you're thinking about running ads, or if somebody else is running ads, or even if you've got an agency running your ads for you, you don't really know much about it, I would say to you, go into the Skill Shop and do the Google Ads training, and that will then give you a better understanding of what's going on and enable you to hold your agency to account better. And that's pretty important. The worst scenario that you can be in is to be in a position of no strength whatsoever. So if you just don't know, how can you don't know to ask the right questions, and that can be really tricky. So definitely get in there, do some of these. There's the Google Analytics training is accessible from that place as well. When you go into the Google Ads section here, there are multiple kind of areas that you can go into, different types of things. Some of the stuff will not be relevant for you, things like Google Shopping and stuff like that, but lots of other things. And there's, well worth doing. And again, you can get yourself the certificate at the end if you want to sit the test. It's optional, but it's free. Really, really important one then. Next one is to think about competitors. And what I would say to you is pick, say, 5 competitors. They might be local to you, or there might be ones that are sitting on page 1 for the keywords that you want to rank for. It could be a variation of those things. What we do is we go in and we do a homepage comparison. So we compare on bits of, basically go in, take a screenshot of your homepage and then these competitors' homepages, print them off, lay them on the table, and then have a look at them and say, right, okay, in isolation here, what I'm looking at here, which one kind of resonates with me the best? Do the same thing for your different service pages. So pick a service, pick a few services, and compare and contrast the language, the resonance, even the aesthetics of the page, the colors, how can I read it? Is it nice and clear? Does it look fresh? Does it look sharp? Think about those kind of things as well, because these are all factors that subconsciously or otherwise we make when we land on a website. It could have the greatest text on it, the greatest words on it, whatever. But if it's slightly out of focus or the logo's a bit fuzzy or whatever, then that could be enough to switch us off and make us go somewhere else. So this whole thing is going to hang together. A really good one here, particularly in, because if we're talking lead generation here, obviously the last page they go to in order to send that lead in to you is to go to the contact form. And I would say that contact form is arguably the most important page on your website. Go and have a look at yours. What's on that page? It'd be really interesting to see. Most of the time I find it's just a form and maybe a phone number and nothing else, nothing to support it. No, hey, we can't wait to hear from you. Even a picture of somebody who might be handling my inquiry or something like that, that can be useful for creating resonance up front. But get some creds on that page. Get a couple of a testimonial on that page or something like that. Just something to add a bit of color and a bit of variation and a bit of interest to that page, rather than this flat, what looks like an Excel form, for example. So pay attention. If you go around and look at your competitors, you'll see lots of people not doing it, but you will eventually come across somebody who's doing it quite well. Look at things like the brand strapline. So are people using a 3 or 4 word phrase to kind of almost sum up the business? And typically that will sit under the logo, top left, on every page that you go to on their website. And that's a great place to reinforce the values and the difference that you're going to bring to me as a customer. So have a look at that. USPs, unique selling points. Are there any in services? We always find it tricky. People sometimes say to us, well, what's your USP, Dave, as a business? It's a tricky one to answer because everybody largely does marketing pretty much the same kind of way, for example. So but it's thinking about the selling point. So what are the slight differences? What do you and your team or your business bring to the table that you're proud of? Are you pushing that out there? A challenge I often put to business owners particularly is to say, okay, tell me about your business. Why did you set this up? What's it all about? Why do you get out of bed in the mornings? And they all give me a really eloquent kind of view on the business and why they set it up and what have you. And then I'll then say to them, okay, let's look at the website. Where is that? Where do we find that bit on the website? And sometimes they'll say to me, oh yeah, well, I didn't really want to sell too much on the site. Well, we need an appropriate level of sell here. If we want people to do something, we need to lead them to the table. The other time they'll say to me, oh, it's on the About Us page, Dave, you have a look there. Well, that's great, but let's be honest, I probably won't read that page on your website. I'll look at one page, and if Google has sent me to a service page, I'll probably make a judgment at that point. So it's really, really important to make sure that the values of your business and the why almost of the business are present pretty much on every page that I might go to. Call to action. Is there something on this page that says, hey, come on, now you've read this, pick up the phone and talk to us, or fill out the form? If we don't ask, we don't get. So really, really important. Make sure that your website has lots of calls to action, lots of opportunity for me to get in touch with you. That's really, really important. And then testimonials. Don't have a page of testimonials, because again, no one's going to read it. Okay, have it anyway, but make sure that you've got a testimonial on every single page. One, is probably all you need on each page, but make sure that it's relevant to that particular page. So don't have a family law testimonial sitting on a commercial page, for example. Make sure that it makes sense. But and that's none of this is rocket science, is it? Let's be honest. But it's amazing how often I find that where the testimonial that's sitting on a page is completely irrelevant to that particular service. And then the final one to think about is how you're using awards, qualifications, accreditations, that kind of stuff. How are you showcasing that stuff, and how are your competitors showcasing? And the key question here, when you've done all of this and you've compared this across the 5 or 6 different websites, is to then ask yourself the honest question, which one would I buy from? And if it's not your own site, then you'll know what you need to change to make that better. And then the final one we want to look at is sustainability. Now, obviously, sustainability in the world is really, really important, but sustainability in terms of the web space is becoming increasingly important. The internet is responsible for about 2% of global emissions. Those lovely data centers and things, every time you click a button, that's, every message you send, every email you send is consuming energy somewhere. And that's, as I say, is about 2% of global emissions. Now, that's almost as much as the entire airline industry. And when you think of it like that, that's pretty frightening. And it's even more frightening to think that actually we're still at the evolution of our use of digital as a community. And so it's only going to increase. And at the moment, only about 58% of the world's population is actually regularly connected to the internet. Huge swathes of the population that are not, and that is going to change in time. There's no getting away from that. So thinking about reducing your the carbon output of your website is quite important, and particularly if you are going after local government contracts or working with bigger companies that have higher sustainability kind of targets and issues than perhaps you might have within your business. So there's a nice little tool here called the Website Carbon Calculator. Type that into Google, that will take you through to that page. You can pop your website address into there and it will tell you how you score on a scale of A to F, A being brilliant, F being, oh my goodness. Again, what's really interesting here, to reduce carbon output on websites, SEO, actually good quality SEO is worked really well for that. It will reduce your carbon emissions, and a fundamental one in that is website speed, because the longer it takes to load, then it's churning through and burning more electricity effectively while it's doing that. So even a case of just going in and refreshing images and reducing them, reducing their size without reducing obviously the quality of the image, can make a big difference on these things. So it's something to really have an eye on, and this is something that's only going to become more and more prevalent as we kind of move forwards. So just as a recap then, what have we looked at? So we're looking at this digital marketing audit process. So we've looked at our business questions. So we've asked ourselves, how, who, what, why, where are we, what are we doing, who are we selling to? We've asked all of those questions, so we've got a better understanding of ourselves as a business and where we want to get to. We've sense checked the way that we're collecting data. We've then gone and looked at that data. What's that telling us? Where's that traffic coming from? Where, how is our website operating? What pages are working? What pages aren't? Do your keyword research. Where are you ranking? What are people looking for? What do you want to be ranking for? Then the SEO audit, technical content and trust, as we talked about. Look at your Google ads or your social ads. What are you doing? Have a look at other people's. How do your ads compare to those? What are your quality scores looking like? Those sorts of things. Then the competitor analysis, fundamentally important. If I went to your website, would I buy, or would I buy from somebody else? And then that last one to look at is sustainability. So hopefully what I've done there is just share with you our process that we work through. Hopefully that's given you some tools and things to go away and have a look at. So do that. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to contact me. Have a look at our socials, check out our website. Tons of information on there and training resources and really useful kind of insights and blogs and stuff like that. So feel free to use those, and hopefully that'll help you in your marketing journey.